driving on the 101 freeway headed west in my 1989 Honda Shitbox. It's got a rusted out bottom and the windows are rolled down because the AC doesn't work. And it's a warm, sweltering hot California summer day, and I'm sweating through my cheap suit. Cars are zipping past me, and my mind starts to wander. And I think about this Everest-sized pile of debt that I have from my student loans, and I think about if I'm going to be able to make rent that month, and if I'm going to even be able to make dinner. And I get into an accident. I crash into the back of a brand new red Mustang. And we pull off to the side of the road, and the lady who was driving the Mustang, she's nice enough. We exchange information, and I look at her car, and there isn't that much damage to it. Like the back bumper, it's got a few dents and scrapes. My car now has the brand new addition of this giant dent in the center of the hood that's so big, if I wanted to sit down and take a nap in it, I totally could. I continue driving until I reach Encino, which is this really posh neighborhood. And there's a single street, and at the front of that street, there's a guard gate. And I tell the guard who I'm there to meet, and he phones up who he needs to phone up, and he checks it out. And I continue to drive up this street. It's just lined with mansions, and one is bigger than the next. And it's almost like these people, they buy them out of catalogs in order to compete with one another. And I park my car well away from the address where I'm supposed to be, behind some hedges, and I walk to the mansion. The year is 2001, I'm 23 years old, and I'm about to have my very first job interview. I'm sitting in one of the 5 living rooms in this ginormous house, across from Shelley, the lady of the house. And Shelley, she's very warm and caring, and she's beautiful and stylish, and she's got long brown hair. And we talk, and she tells me about herself, and about the job, and about her husband. And at the end of the interview, she tells me that I have the job. It's here when I realize, after a crash, something good happens. Now I go home and I come back the next day, and I work out of Shelley's office, her home office, which is small, it's adjacent to the bedroom, and it has a beautiful view. There's a big window, and it looks out over the hills, and there's a swimming pool below, and it's nice. And I'm there with Anne, who is Shelley's current assistant. Now Anne is looking to get out. She's been working for Shelley for more years than she cares to have, and she wants to pursue a career in acting or improv comedy. And she tells me all about the job. She tells me that I need to get the mail, and I need to sift through it, make sure that Shelley gets the invitations that she's supposed to get, and make sure that the phone gets answered, and make sure that her calendar lines up with her husband's calendar. And Anne, she takes me around the house and introduces me to the cook and the maids and the nannies. They have 5 children. Every single kid has their own nanny. That's how rich these people are. At the end of the second day, Shelley, she sits me down, we have a heart-to-heart, and she asks me how I'm doing, and I say, I'm fine, like I really like the job, and I really like you. And she says, well, I think if you come work for me, you're going to get bored. Why don't you go and work for my husband? He works at Creative Artists Agency. Now, Creative Artists Agency, or CAA, is the largest, most powerful talent agency in the entire universe. I'm legally obligated to tell you that. And to work there is not an easy feat. Like, you have to know somebody in order to get through the door. You can't just apply for a job. That's not how it works. And for me, this is sort of like jumping from the bottom rung of the ladder to the very top in an extremely short period of time. I mean, especially when you're considering that I just want to be an assistant. So I say yes, and I drive out to the CAA building, which is nicknamed the Death Star. It's at the end of Little Santa Monica Boulevard in Beverly Hills in this beautiful marble building that was designed by I.M. Pei to instill a sense of strength and tranquility and warmth. And I go inside the building and there's this giant lobby and it's 3 stories tall and there's glass everywhere and on the ceiling that allows for a lot of natural sunlight. There's a giant Liechtenstein painting. It's 2 stories tall. The man painted it inside the building so that when and if the building is ever sold, the painting goes with it. Over to the side, there's a reception bank with 3 receptionists. And all day long, all they do is answer the phone, CAA, how may I direct your call? Eventually, Arlene comes and gets me, and she's the head of HR. And you can tell Arlene's been there for a while. She's got like short, spiky gray hair that sort of flatlines into a Frankenstein type thing. And she's got these really wolfish blue eyes that if you stare into for too long, your soul will get sucked out of your body. She takes me downstairs to the basement where the human resources department is, along with the mailroom and the supply room. And I sit across from her in her office. And Arlene says, we have 2 job openings right now. One is working for an agent in the television department. And I think, well, I know what television is. I like it, and I'll probably be pretty good at that. And she says, the second job is working for an agent in the books to feature films department. And I think, well, books, they're okay. I like them. Motion pictures, that sounds awesome. Like, that's what I want to do. I mean, ever since I was a little kid, I want to make movies. And Arlene says, I'll let you decide. Now, in my mind, I hear one word repeat over and over again. And that word is television. Television, 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 television. But before that word can travel to my mouth and reach Arlene's ear, she says, I know exactly what you want. And I watch as she picks up the receiver to her phone, dials an extension, and the next thing you know, I am sitting in the office of the agent in the books to feature films department where I did not want to be. This is one of the greatest mistakes of my life. Now, the books to feature film department, it's like back in a dark corner. Like, nobody really wants to go over there. It's a small department. There are 6 agents, and out in front of all of their offices, there's a bullpen where all of the assistants work. And I'm sitting in the agent's office, and it's not really even an office. It's like half an office. It's on the inside, so there aren't any windows. It's like a former storage closet. And she doesn't even have a desk. She's got a countertop that runs from one end to the other. And she's sitting in the corner, and she's young, and she's nerdy. She's got these glasses and really curly, frizzy hair, and she shakes nervously a lot. Like, I don't know if you ever saw Dr. Katz, that cartoon on Comedy Central, but she's like one of those characters. And she explains how she got her start, how she used to be a receptionist and she worked her way up. And she says that if you were to cut her open, she would bleed CAA red. See, all of the various agencies around town, they send out scripts to the production companies and the studios, and every single one of these agencies has their very own script covers. And CAA script covers are blood red. And then she asks me why I'm there. And I tell her about Shelley, and I say, well, Shelley's husband, he's a partner at CAA, and it's like, bling, I said the magic word, and I can see the wheels like spinning in her head, and she just decides, I can turn this into something positive for me. And she hires me. And it's great. I take the weekend and I go shopping because I don't have any clothes and I definitely do not fit in there. And I buy a couple of shirts and I buy some pants and I buy 5 ties. And I figure if I mix and match them up enough, nobody's going to notice. And then I decide to go get my hair cut, because my hair's a little long. And I don't have enough money for the salon or for the barbershop even. And so I go down the street to the kind of barbershop that's really it's like a barbershop in the front of a house. It's like a barbershop / living room. And I sit down, and there's a very nice Mexican woman, and I say, just buzz me. And she buzzes my hair, because I figure, why not, just a fresh start. And then I look in the mirror, and I say, you know, I've always kind of wanted to be a blonde. I was born a blonde, my hair turned brown. And so we pick out a color, and she dyes my hair. And the next day, I go out to Venice Beach, and I'm with a buddy, and we're walking on the boardwalk, and there are all these like tattoo parlors and places where you can get your ear pierced. And I say, I've always kind of wanted to get my ear pierced. And so I get my ear pierced, just one. And on Monday morning, I take a shower, and I look in the mirror, and the blonde is gone, and my hair is now bright orange, and my ear is bloody, and there's pus coming out of it. And I go to work. Monday morning, I'm in that lobby, and it's like bustling with activity. There are agents on their phones trying to make deals, and there's a mailroom guy pushing a mail cart, and I see Arlene across the way, and she's talking to somebody, but I don't care. And I raise my hand, I say, hey, Arlene, and she looks at me, and you can tell that she doesn't recognize me. She doesn't know who I am. And then all of a sudden it registers, and she's mortified. Now that first week there, it's pretty easy. I'm getting trained by the agent's old assistant. He's this very tall, blonde, surfer-looking dude. He's smart. He's put in his ear, and it's time for him to go. And that's what this place is for some. It's a launching pad. So you put in your year, you get to go and work at a production company, like Shane is going to do, like I want to do. And I sit there with Shane, and we go through all the motions, you know. We get the pitcher of water ready for her in the morning that has just the right amount of ice, and we set it down on the counter table in her office. And when the mail comes around, we sift through the mail, we decide what's important, what's not. And then we go through rolling calls, which is a vital part to working for any agent. And that means that while the agent is on the phone having a conversation with somebody, I'm listening in one ear. And then in the other ear, I am calling the next person on the list who she wants to talk to make sure that they are ready to go the instant that her other phone call ends. And we do this back and forth for several hours at a time, every day. And I drop phone calls because it's confusing and I'm kind of a dumbass. And then we get down to what it is we really do in the books to feature films department, which is we get manuscripts, like galleys, before they are actually turned into published books. And we send those around town to the various production companies and studios, to the people that the agent has made contacts with. We do this every Friday, and then on Monday, people are either interested in the property and there's a bidding war, which is great, or the property is a big dud and nothing happens to it. So Shane leaves, and I'm on my own. And I do the water just the right way, and I do the letters, and I start to drop calls, and at first she doesn't care, she just laughs it off, but then it becomes more of an issue, and she starts to yell and scream. And we're a pretty small department, so all of my peers can hear when this happens, and it's extremely embarrassing. And one day she isn't feeling well, and she sends me a little note over Quick Conference. It's like our own internal IM system. It's QC, Quick Conference. And you can either QC one person or a team of people or the entire company. And she says, I'm not feeling well, do you have any Tylenol or Advil? And I QC her back that I don't. And she says, can you find some? And so I send out a QC asking if anybody has Tylenol or Advil. And the agent, she goes to a meeting, and when she comes back from that meeting an hour later, I'm like sitting at my desk and I hop to because I can hear her coming from down the hall. And I don't want her to think that I was slacking off, even though I kind of was slacking off. And she says, how did people know that I was sick? I've got all these agents coming up to me asking me if my tummy feels okay, and they want to offer me, pills, and I say, well, you wanted me to get you some Advil, so I sent out a QC. And she said, well, who did you send it to? I said, everybody. And she gets furious, and she goes into her office and she slams the door, and I sit there feeling like crap. For 3 hours, she doesn't talk to me. And finally, she sends me a QC asking if I can drive her home because her husband isn't around. So out of the goodness of my heart, we get into my Honda shitbox and I drive her to her beautiful condo tower in Westwood. And I see where she lives, and I know that she sees how I'm living, and it's not great. And I wonder if this kind of act of generosity will make her be nice to me. Now, part of my job is making sure that appointments are set up and dinners. And there's this one evening where some clients are in town, and they're in from far away, and the agent has given me the address of the restaurant where she wants to eat. And I relay this information to the clients, and I make sure that the reservation is all set with the restaurant. The agent goes to dinner, the clients go to dinner, I go home and watch television. The next morning, the agent comes into the office looking like she hasn't slept at all. And it's because she hasn't slept at all. Apparently, she went to the restaurant that she wanted me to set up the reservation for. And I sent the clients to the restaurant with the same name, but many, many, many miles away. And this is before cell phones. So it takes them about 2 hours to finally meet up, and they don't eat until 10, and she's just beyond upset. And I go downstairs, and I sit across from Arlene, and she gives me an out. She says, you don't have to go back and work there. You can go and work at another desk in the company, that's fine. But I'm thinking, no. I'm up to the challenge. I'm going to put in my year. I can do this. Now the company is not all bad. There are several perks. One time, Spielberg comes into the office. And I'm a big Spielberg fan. I always have been since I was a little boy. And I kind of stare at him. He's out in the lobby sitting down. And I'm staring at him from these glass doors like a stalker. And I walk in front of him twice. And I do kind of like this side view thing out of my head's forward, but I'm looking at him. And he's shorter than he seems in real life. And they always make a big production out of it. They bring these trays of food, like meats and cheeses and vegetables, and they set them in the conference room. And Steven Spielberg, he picks through what he wants. And then afterwards, they bring the trays down to us, and we're allowed to eat off these trays of greatness. And then I hold the door open for Donald Sutherland one time. He doesn't say thank you. And I ride the elevator with Sinbad 3 times, because he's just always around. And I make friends, the people that are also in my department, and I meet Rusty, who's this older gay gentleman, and he's like one of my very first gay friends, and he's just such a positive sort of person where he's been there for a long time, he works in legal affairs, and he's getting a decent salary. And he refers to CAA as the 5th level of hell. And I totally understand where he's coming from. So I go back to my desk and I try and do a good job. And whenever that happens, I start to get nervous, and then I make little tiny mistakes, and those little tiny mistakes, they turn into even bigger mistakes. And like I'll take a folder full of letters into her office, and she'll review the letters, and she'll write with a red pen every single thing that I did wrong, and she'll bring them back out to me and tell me to do it again. And this happens on a weekly basis. And every Wednesday, I get called into her office, and she sits me down, and she cries in front of me and tells me the various ways that I am messing up her life. And every day, I get into my car, and I drive home, and I sit in rush hour traffic, and I grab the steering wheel as tight as I possibly can, and I shake it, and I scream, and I yell, and I let out every single thing inside my body that I hate, that I absolutely cannot stomach about this person that I am working for, yet cannot say any of this to their face. And then one day the Bloodmobile shows up. Every day around lunchtime, they send around the mail cart. You get your mail, and sometimes there are notices. And on this particular day, there's a notice saying that the Bloodmobile is coming. And I'm a patriot, and I feel like it is my responsibility as an American to donate blood. It's a good thing to do. And I go outside to the shiny Bloodmobile that's out there, and I walk up the stairs into that sterile environment, and there's a nurse, and she hands me a clipboard. And I take the clipboard and I look at the various questions that are on there. And one of the questions is, have you ever engaged in anal sex with a gay man? And I check mark yes, because I in fact have engaged in anal sex with a gay man. And I'm proud of this fact. It's not something that was easy, took a long time, and when it finally happened, it was great. And she says, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to give blood. And I say, why not? And she says, because the Red Cross doesn't accept blood from homosexuals. And I feel really bad, and I feel like I'm less than, and I go back to my desk, and the agent is there, and her door is open, and she's sitting inside her office. And she says, what happened? Because I haven't been gone long enough. And I decide, well, this is probably as good a time as any. I go in, and I kind of close the door, and I like hide behind it a little bit, and I say, you know, it's probably not a big deal. I didn't really think about mentioning it before, but I'm gay. And this was a big deal because I had only told my sister and like my really close friends, like my parents didn't even know. And her face turns like this shade of white, like she's just seen a ghost or been spooked. And I watch as her chair backs up about 3 inches. And she says, my uncle died of AIDS. And I think, okay, well that's a pretty big leap. I'm gay to AIDS, but I get it. And then I say, well, I'm very sorry to hear that. And I can tell like she's scared, like there's something very off here. I go back and I do my job, and a couple of hours later she says, can you print out 2 fax cover sheets for me? Print out the fax cover sheets, I take them into her office, and there are 2 stacks of paper on her countertop desk. She takes the fax cover sheets, she looks at them, she puts them on the 2 stacks of paper, hands them to me, and says, here, fax these. And I fax them because I definitely know how to do that. And I take them back to her, and I go back to doing my job. About an hour later, she calls me in, and she says, do you know what you've done? I said, no. She said, you sent the wrong fax to the wrong people. See, there were 2 deal memos. One was a deal for $40,000. The other was a deal for $400,000. The person whose deal was for 40 got the deal for 400. Called the agent up and said, hey, why can't we sweeten our deal up some? Get a call from Arlene, go downstairs, sit across from her. She tells me all about the benefits of COBRA and that I'm being terminated. I go back to my desk and I get to work the rest of the day. And I sit there thinking, I know that I made a mistake by not looking at those deal memos, but at the same time, I know that she did. And I think maybe this isn't an accident. And I sit there in my cubicle, and I gather my stuff, and I look at the computer, and it's locked by security. And the screen, it just gets like smaller and smaller and smaller. And I decide, that's it. And I leave. I say my goodbyes to my friends, I give Rusty a hug, and I say so long to the agent. Now after this happens, I send my resume out to a bunch of companies around town, and because I now have CAA on my resume, I get phone calls. And I get job interviews. And eventually, I land a job working at this management company, which grants me the opportunity to move to lovely New York City, where I eventually work at a production company and get to make movies, which is what I always wanted to do. Crash happens, something good happens as a result. Now along the way, I've told this story to many people, and a lot of people know CAA, they've got friends that work there, they've been there, it's either great or it's awful. And they always ask me the same question. Who did you work for? What was the agent's name? And I always tell them the exact same thing. I worked for Satan. Thanks.